Welcome to the Max Bet Podcast, a podcast dedicated to everything gaming. I'm Landon Jones, here with Mike McKiskey. Let's get started.
What's going on, brother man? How are you?
What's up, bro?
Another week in the biz. Love doing it.
What's cracking? Yeah, we've got you in a different spot, so I don't know what to do with my head.
Where do I look? Yeah, well,
figure
sitting
this
over
out.
here, we got a remote guest. So we're doing another Aussie special down, remote access. So it's easier to sit here when we're doing that. But
It's a better view.
yeah, I get the good background today.
Yeah,
so you get the city view. Normally I get the worst of the three, but that's okay because I'm usually so big the background doesn't play. But
You're like, city? What city?
like what's yeah, people are like, was there a window behind you, buddy? I don't know, man. You're like a wall. But no, man, it's exciting week. So sorry to screw you up with your head game, but other than that, all good.
It's okay. It was weird because I was like, go to look over here and you're over here, but you can stay there.
It works.
It's nice,
it
dude.
Works. We'll adjust. What have you been up to, man?
Trying to figure out how to get out of the heat, and so
Good luck.
yeah, I figured. I don't know. I guess I'm not new to Vegas because I went to college here and I've been in and out, but.
Yeah.
New to like living here as an actual adult, that has
not just
responsibilities.
21-year-old idiot.
Yeah. Well, I'm still an idiot. I just
But not
am
21.
Not 21. So I wanted to get out of my house this weekend, and I'm like, Googling different spots,
Sure.
and Mount Charleston came up. And I remember like way back 10, 12, 15 years ago going out there. But I took my dog out there last weekend to go hiking. We hiked up to a waterfall. It was not a big hike. It was like maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles. But the temperature was like 15 degrees cooler than it was here. It was a beautiful day. Tons of people were out. I felt like I was in Utah in the mountains. It was gorgeous, bro.
It's nice, yeah.
Here's the picture.
Not too far from here, which is nice.
Yeah.
We do that with the kids. We'll take
Yeah.
the kids, and maybe every other trip we take the dog, just because with 2 toddlers and a dog, it can get a little nuts out there. But it's fun, man. It's cool, right? And they have hikes for everybody. Like you can hike to the top of the mountain, which I think the round trip is like 12 miles. I've done that once with some of my buddies, and that was a hard day. Or you can do the 1-2 mile loop, get the little waterfall. Was it Icebox? Is that which one it was? Or there's a bunch of
It was like
trips,
ladies, something falls. Angie's Falls or something.
Something.
I'll tell you this.
Shout out,
Tell me if
Angie.
I'm a bad person. So
Okay, yeah.
I'm coming down.
If you have to ask, probably yes, but I guess we'll
I
find
know.
out.
Well, I feel bad for people. So it wasn't a tough hike, like I said, but I mean, there was a nice little climb.
You're going to get a sweat
You
in.
can figure it out. There was a bunch of overly, obese people at the top with kids, so they made it.
Yeah.
So I'm cruising down with Blue, and there's this family, dude. They must have been somewhere from South America because they were screaming. Ah, ah. Felt like,
Were they screaming at the dog or no? Just to each
other.
other? Oh,
It's just
okay.
like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you guys
chill out.
Okay. Just fucking hike,
They're
right?
hyped.
Like,
Yeah, they're
take it
juiced up
easy.
to do the trip.
So 4 of them were up, and then you had 3 of them in the middle pack, and then you had the last pack, which is like mom, daughter, were not stoked that they had been dragged out.
So they're just like the grumbly drag-alongs to this trip. Okay, got it. Yeah.
And this poor lady looks up and she's like, how much further is it? I can't do this. I was like, you're literally almost to the top. Like, you should just keep going. You're almost there. They're probably a good mile away, dude. It was definitely I was halfway down.
So 2 miles up.
Yeah.
You meet them about a mile in
Correct.
and give her the, hey, you're almost there.
And the last part's definitely the hardest. But I wanted to motivate this family to get out.
That's true. I don't know if it makes you a bad guy. It's untrue, I guess, but it's part of it's hey, otherwise if you go, listen, you ain't even through the hard part. If you give her some honesty, then maybe they go, hey, we're turning this program around.
If I would have just said you were not even, if you were at the halfway, she's
out.
Already,
she's gone.
She was looking for any excuse to look up to dad that was at the front of the pack and be like,
yo, we're turning the program out of here. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think you probably did the right move. I think I've never been on a hike where I've asked somebody that and not been told, hey, you're almost there. So I think that's just the unanimous hiker move.
Good.
Because I'm the kind of guy that wants to know. I laugh. I'll be at my trainer and I'll say, how many reps you want? let's just say 15 or whatever. We're walking the whole thing doing lunges or something. Like, okay, got it. Like mentally, I just like to know. She could say we're doing 50. That's fine. I just want to know it's 50. So recently she's been screwing with me going, all right, 15, cool. Then she go, give me 5 more. I'm like, we had a deal. If you wanted 20, you should have said 20, right? So for me, if I'm almost there, I'm like, all right, like I guess, that would have screwed me up more than most probably, but I don't think that's a bad move.
I'm gonna start telling them in the parking lot. Like, you guys are almost there.
Easy hike.
You made it.
Yeah, you're dirty and sweaty because you just had the hard hike. But you're like, don't worry, it's easy.
Where else is like a cool place to visit around Vegas?
For that vibe, like I like Red Rock. Yeah. So Red Rock's got. I don't do like rock climbing. Like you see guys out there with ropes. Like
you wouldn't have to climb fire. Like, hey guys,
I made it.
One pull up.
Exactly. One giant reach. But they have a lot of trails that are fun. Like we take the dog and the kids. Like so that's another good spot. You can go out to the lake. It's way too hot to go to the lake right now. It feels like the lake is like Infernoville. But in the cooler months, you can do the lake. There's a bunch of trails out there, and whether you're biking or walking. So this is the Visit Las Vegas tourism play for those the non-gamers. But no, it's a good place to live and good stuff to do.
It's just nice to know. Yeah, there's a lot of cool spots around Vegas. Didn't know it. What do we have going on, man? There's a lot. We got a new sponsor.
So we're excited about that. Yeah. So. John Akers came on the show, had a good time, told some awesome stories. Total stud move. Probably beat both of us in arm wrestling if we put it on the table. And he liked it so much, we worked out a deal. So he's sponsoring the show now for a little bit, and it's cool. I mean, it's fun for me when folks like that approach to sponsor because I've seen the product, right? So like I've been to their studio or whatever you want to call their offices. Seen it working, right? You talk to some of the customers because like they just announced that they did a big deal with Penn. So Penn's using their technology and they're a leading operator. So you look at it and you go, all right, I like that, right? Like we've talked about it from day one. Like we don't want to sponsor or be sponsored people that like we don't believe in their tech, right? So Eilers makes it easy, Kieran Gaming Analytics makes it easy, and Akers now makes it pretty easy. And so they got the foundation system, and I think one of the coolest things about it is it's real time. Right. So they're collecting all this data that they're able to crunch, analyze.
What does real time mean? So like immediately
right now,
you get
So like for example, what they're doing is they have criteria in place which says like, hey, if you're on the game and you win or lose a certain amount, bang, offer right there before you leave the game. You don't have to go to the kiosk. You don't have to go to the desk. You don't have to wait for the mailer. Right. You're like on the game going, bloop, Landon, how's $20 sound? Free play right now. Download it. So that's pretty cool. So like that's what they're working on. I mean, if you want to hear more about it, you can listen to his interview, which a couple episodes ago. But it's pretty cool. So they came on as a sponsor for us and some of the real time stuff they're doing.
I found it fascinating. I found it awesome. I can't say fascinating.
I think I say fascinating more than you.
One of us is saying
we got hooked.
Today,
it's like it's like sneezing. Yeah. One says it, and the other
fascinating.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool that John, he retired. So he like did well in this business. He's obviously invented a lot of things that we're still using to this day that were invented in the 80s, which he talks about. And he came back and invested his own money, like I think it's $20 million of his own cash.
Big bet, yeah.
And he said, look, like Amazon, there's so much new technology and we're still using stuff from the 80s. He's like, there's a missing link here.
There's a big jump we can make, and he feels like he's in the driver's seat. And
cool to be that passionate about the industry and see a gap and say, I'm going back in.
Yeah,
slap my hand, coach.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to learn more about what they're doing, you can listen to the Max Bet podcast with John Akers. He walks you through it himself, or their site Akers4Foundation.com. So check out their website, or if that's too much to remember, just Google Akers4. It'll pop up. It's like the first 3 options. So. Yep. But yeah, cool stuff. Definitely, if you're running a casino, worth checking out, worth educating yourself on what they're doing, and maybe something makes sense.
Yeah, man. Check out Akers Technology, and thank you guys for supporting us.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep the lights on.
And so who are we interviewing today, bud?
This will be a fun one, man. Yep. So we're back to Accent Friendly.
Great.
Got our friend from the land of Oz. Mr. Dallas Orchard. So he's an Australian. He's currently the chief operating officer for the Asia Pacific region at IGT. So
big job.
He's had many big jobs before it. I actually found out prepping for the interview that he played UNLV football. So I immediately love him. He knows what it's like to go through some embarrassment. So he's obviously going to be a tough guy. But yeah, so it's been fun. So Mr. Dallas Orchard is coming on the show, and I'm excited to talk to him.
Well, cool.
Yeah, and then all I would say is anyone listening, if you got a 2 minutes, just take a quick quick subscribe on the YouTube channel or whatever platform if you're listening to. If you like what you hear, and just subscribe, it helps us, and we'd appreciate it. So,
yes,
yes,
please
do it. Man of many words.
Please push the like and subscribe button if you haven't already subscribed.
Yeah, and if you have, thank you.
Yeah, and if you haven't, thank you for doing it.
With that, let's go to Dallas.
Let's do it. Rock and roll.
Boom. Dallas, what is going on, brother? Thanks for joining the show.
Pleased to be here. Doing well, thank you. Joining you from Sydney, Australia. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're like a couple interviews away from getting some sort of honorary Australian badge or something because we've quite a few Aussies on the show and more to come, I'm sure. So appreciate you dialing in.
Of course. I saw you just had Scotty Olive. He actually lives not too far from me. His house is a little bit bigger than mine, of course. You can imagine that the creator of Lightning Link has a pretty big house. But
nice.
He's
but
good,
how big is your shower? I think from talking to him, that's really the key element of the house down there.
That's how you measure success, yeah?
Yeah.
It's big enough. I can fit into it, right?
That's good.
There you go. Gets the job done. That's perfect.
That's right.
Oh man, so we appreciate you coming on, and it was funny. So we joke about the Aussies we've had on, and then like Robert Perry was on, and he's like he was with ATI for a while, and kind of he counts himself in the pro Aussie camp. So we were getting a few seed little tidbits on you. So what I never realized is you played football at UNLV. Is that right?
Oh, badly, Kiski.
That's okay. I'm a rebel too. I played offensive line, so I'm loving it.
Yeah, I was a rugby guy my whole life, my whole career. Played for the Las Vegas Blackjacks, and then played a little bit of football. I kicked a big long field goal for Reno High School, which got Coach Horton's attention back in those days. I don't have many regrets in life, but that is one regret. I could have been a really good kicker, but I was in a fraternity. I played rugby. I did everything I shouldn't have done, and the career didn't end up too good. But I had some great times. It was a great experience.
That's awesome.
Who's your favorite rugby team then?
Oh, there you go.
Can we kick that?
Just
the Wallabies, of course.
Okay.
That's the Australian team. But
Yeah,
you go anywhere in the world, everybody only knows the All Blacks, right? So they all think everybody's from New Zealand. So
well, they have a book, so
it's a great book.
Yeah, that's probably one of the best brands in the world, mate. The success they've had as a professional franchise is unparalleled. Yeah. Don't tell any Kiwis I said that.
Yeah, exactly. But do you root local? Like we always laugh because all the guys seem to root. No one. I don't think we've doubled anyone up yet. Because like I think Kurt's for Manly and Gavin was the Roosters and Matt was somewhere else, right?
Right on. You're talking footy. Yeah, I'm a Roosters fan actually, which is eastern suburbs. I live on the northern beaches. Manly play just down the street at Brookvale Oval, so I have to support Manly. But I'm an eastern suburbs guy in the rugby league, rugby union, obviously New South Wales.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I laugh. I have a Rooster shirt at the house, but they're not designed because of Gavin. He talked me into it, and then I laugh because I'm going, they're not designed to be worn. Like they're designed to be played in, so they're very tight. I'm like, I can't wear this anywhere unless I'm in the mix.
Mate, I retired right at the right time. That's before those real tight things come. Otherwise, you're wearing 6X, 7XL just to get them over your belly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. Because I have like a triple, and I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. I'm like, this thing, like, I'm not normally a 2X is baggy. This thing is like snug. So glad it's not just me.
Yeah, no room to hide, man. No room to hide in those. But no, I tell you what, my highlight probably playing for UNLV was, I think it was maybe even the last time we were in a bowl game, but we played UCLA in the Las Vegas Bowl. Both teams stayed at the MGM. It was a fantastic experience. That's when we were decent. I'm not sure UNLV's ever been great, but we were decent, and it's been a tough road since then, obviously, for UNLV football, unfortunately.
Yeah, we got high hopes with the new facilities and the new Raider Stadium and doing some different things. So we'll see. Right. Coach Arroyo came in from Oregon, so he's got some big school experience. So we'll see if we can put it all together finally. But yeah, it was more fun than it was bragging rights. It was more like, hey, we're having a good time versus, hey, we're 12-0 or whatever the title would be. So
absolutely.
That's why.
I've always wondered how much Mike wants the MaxBet podcast to quickly become a sports betting podcast, but we are here to talk about gaming. So I'm gonna fire away the first question and ask you how the properties are doing in Australia as opposed to the States. Are you guys fully open, and what seems to be the
what's the lay of the land?
What's the lay of the land?
Yeah, a bit depressing at the moment, to be honest. It's a bit geographical. So I manage Asia Pacific, of course. So it's really a tale of two halves, as I keep telling my executives at IGT. Asia is in a bit of a mess, to be honest. They just continue to have wave after wave after wave. Macau's in a world of hurt because you don't have a lot of people coming in from the mainland, and the locals are probably only 10 to 15% of the play on an annual basis, and there continues to be outbreaks. So that's not great. The Philippines is in dire straits. Malaysia, Singapore, they're all basically in and out of lockdown and not doing all that well. But that region will recover. There's such a thirst for gaming over there, and of course the population that's there to support it. So Asia's struggling. And then Australia is really a story of states. New South Wales right now, which is the biggest state in Australia, is in complete lockdown, has been for a couple of months, and probably will be through the end of September. So that's hurting, no doubt. The only positive is the clubs and the pubs and the hotels have been through this before. They came out the other side and they had record profits. So there's a level of optimism, but that uncertainty of when we'll come out of lockdown is certainly weighing on everybody's shoulders. And then the other states of Australia continue to be open, albeit in snap lockdowns, right? So not a large volume of cases in regards to COVID, but the government takes very decisive action when it does break out. So a bit frustrating at the moment. We're all in lockdown, just hoping to getting out of jail at some point.
Yeah, that makes sense. So no real openings in the great. So New South Wales, Sydney, right? It's like the big area, right? So those guys are all shut. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was originally just Greater Sydney because we were trying to contain it from getting out to regional New South Wales, but unfortunately we haven't done that. So the entire state's closed, which is certainly hurting the industry. And AGE, which is our big trade show over here, probably second or third biggest in the world behind ICE and G2E, was meant to be in August, and it was cancelled for another year, which is massively depressing because the industry was really needing it.
Probably looking forward to it too, right? I've been to that show. It was a fun show. That was like, for me, it was a good mix of business and just complete tourism. Like I was there to do the show, then I stood on the boat in front of the Sydney Opera House and doing all that. So it was a great time. But yeah, it was a big show. You're right. I was surprised. I didn't know what I was getting into, but then you get it, and you're right. It's online with G2E at least. I mean, in terms of just the size of what the booth was. This was 2017, 2018. It was a while ago, but yeah, it's a great show.
It is. And look, when I used to have my role in Las Vegas, of course, G2E and ICE were crazy, right? Working every minute of the day. But I'd get down to Australia once a year every August. And exactly like you said, it was a bit of work and a bit of fun at the same time.
Seems like some of these countries, you mentioned the Philippines, and I think Duarte is leaning more towards gaming revenue because their country's hurting from COVID, right? Yeah. So it's almost drumming up business as well as it is shutting down, but it doesn't seem like they've made any strides, or have they? In terms of vaccination or openings, or they want to start opening casinos. And correct me if I'm wrong, he was kind of pushing back the expansion and new development of properties, and then all of a sudden 2 years later after COVID, he goes, "There's a lot of revenue we're missing here. We should revisit casinos in our country."
Exactly right. Very pro gaming, and they shut down when it's really only necessary to do so. So that's why the Philippines is probably the fastest growing market in this region. And so it's and look, everything that happens over there, there's a certain element of money going into the president's fund, if you like, as well. So there's no doubt he is very pro gaming. The country's pro gaming. We've got to get it back open.
Juice up the fund. He's going to have some fun with that thing. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, that's right. Imagine trying to pull that off in Vegas or somewhere else.
No chance. So when you're overlooking Asia Pacific. Is it, like, I've always thought of that as a fairly mature market. I mean, Australia's been establishing gaming a long time, obviously Macau as well. Are you looking to some of the islands like the Philippines as the growth, or is it growing and maybe we just don't appreciate that over here on this side? Or what's the overall landscape look like for you guys in that part?
Yeah, I'd say it's isolating it to Australia. There's no doubt. Australia's the most mature gaming market in the world in regards to players, and that's why you've seen the trends and the games that work in Australia really drive the growth and the trajectory of North America, right? Jackpots being one, right? So you see jackpots down here. You wouldn't. There's probably upwards of 95% of the products in Australia are jackpot driven. So that's why you see the level of success that a lot of manufacturers have. You spoke of Scotty Olive. You build a game for Australia, you get it working in Australia, and if it's sustainable and has longevity, 9 times out of 10 it's going to work everywhere else. And that's my mission. My mission was to come down here, focus on the product, focus on our home market in Australia, and then offshore that value to global IGT and really push growth through North America and everywhere else. So Australia, very mature, but still very, very profitable. Asia is where the growth is mostly. And we're really pushing hard into that area. Haven't been able to get there. I've been here for a year and haven't had one trip to Asia. So all my meetings are virtual, unfortunately.
Yeah, interesting. So you mentioned kind of incubating or driving innovation down there and then bringing it across the pond. Do you have anything that's IGT related that we should be looking out for in the next 12, 18 months, or something that's on fire down there that we haven't seen?
Look, we're just focusing on links, right? It's all about those multi-level progressives and then trying to understand what trends. So you got to have some element of hold and respin these days, right? It's become more popular than free games. I mean, if you're putting a game out into the marketplace without some element of hold and respin, you're simply turning the players off. So we've got a lot of links that we're on the verge of releasing that we think are going to hit the mark. Go for Grand, one of our most recent ones. And that's been our focus at IGT globally for the last couple of years, is developing stronger multi-level progressives. And so we're really excited about what we're about to release, and hopefully it offers global value.
Awesome. Yeah, I figured you might have some regional strength there, just because, I mean, when we look at, I look at Washington's market, and your IGT has the number one game, Triple Fortune Dragon. They designed it for that market. There's like 4 skins of it, like different types, right? Spinoffs. Easily number one. So we'll go into a property and we'll say, hey, where do we stand? Obviously, Triple Fortune, and then are we close? And they're like, yeah, you're somewhat nearby. And so I didn't know, it seemed like IGT did a lot of regional, saying, hey, this works in Washington, big market, we're going to release it there, not really a lot of places. So sounds like maybe some of that down by you as well, saying, hey, we're going to lead in with some of these links in Australia, make sure they work, and then, like you said, bleed them out.
Absolutely. And one of your previous guests and that other company down here have kind of designed the blueprint for that, and I think shown that how successful it can be if you get it right.
Yeah, no doubt.
What's up with Japan? We talked to Bo, and he said Japan is like the creme de la creme of new emerging markets, and everybody's just waiting for that puppy to come online.
Well, Bo Wood is an economist, right?
Yeah.
And I saw him. He actually cut the ribbon at the Raiders game the other day.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
What a lucky guy. He's living a good life.
We had a conference down here recently, and I opened it, and then I was introducing Bo, and I kind of did my whole spiel about how I knew him, and we both went to UNLV and we're alumni. Little did I know his was pre-recorded, right? I thought it was going to be a handover. We created a little chemistry at the front end of the conference, and he got on there and completely ignored everything I'd said, which was pretty funny. But Japan, man. So yeah, look, we keep looking at it right now. It is so ambiguous. The government is really don't have their act together in regards to how they want to handle it. The licenses that are on offer are so expensive that you've had some of the biggest players pull out or create syndicates to be able to afford them. And I would say at the moment, and look, for me, I'd love Japan to come online as soon as possible, because it'd be a big part of my region, but probably 2026 best case scenario.
Wow.
Yeah, I got a little ways to go.
Yeah. So Bo, we need Bo out there selling it harder, man.
Bo, just keep putting him on billboards and pre-recorded awkward speeches so that you can keep driving those guys to do it. We so you mentioned earlier one of the other companies, so that's Aristocrat, that's obviously pushed the envelope a little bit, and we usually ask people that how they got into gaming. I understand that you're a legacy, like your dad was I don't know if it was early days, but he was a major player with Aristocrat, and did he kind of drag you into the game, or how'd you end up getting into the biz?
Yeah, definitely through him, actually. Well, my brother's in it as well. My brother's the chief compliance officer at IGT. You should have him on your show at some point.
Is that awkward at the dinner table with your dad being a strong legacy Aristocrat guy as both of his sons are working at IGT?
Well, I get asked that a lot. You know what? If it was the old American management team running IGT, I never would have been allowed to join it. But when it went through that transaction and was bought out by G-Tech and the Italian management company, he gave us permission to do that. But yeah, look, growing up, honestly, we were Len Ainsworth guys, right? You had Len Ainsworth, you had Cy Red, right? The two founding fathers of slot machines and gaming, and two legends of the industry. A lot of people don't know, actually, Cy Red started IGT in the United States by actually distributing Aristocrat product.
Interesting.
And then he got he had the relationship, so he got his own licenses, and then kind of pushed Len Ainsworth and Aristocrat to the side and started doing his own thing, IGT and poker. So they went the last 30 years of their lives never speaking to each other, which was an amazing story. The two legends of the industry, but we were always Aristocrat. And growing up, IGT was the opposition. I mean, all the time. I wasn't even working at that stage, but I was born to hate IGT until such time as I was part of the team and couldn't be happy.
I was going to say, it was like the old Red Sox Yankees, but for business, right? So I was laughing. I'm going, man, I wonder if he's like salty at dinner, but it sounds like new blood in the biz, and now it's all good.
Yeah, exactly. And he was into it, right? So we moved. I always reference it. I've moved around the world for gamings, and so you got army brats and poker machine brats or slot machine brats, and I'm the latter. So we moved to New Zealand in 1988. I'll make this quick. He opened the Aristocrat office in New Zealand in '88. Did 4 years over there. That's where I kind of fell in love with the industry and rugby. And then we moved to America, and he was running Aristocrat in the United States for a long time. So I actually swore I'd never get into it, and then I did. I actually started on the operator side, working at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in marketing during the boom years of Vegas and the Hard Rock, and had a lot of fun. Eventually had to make some money, right? And I'm sure you guys know Sean Evans. Sean Evans is a good friend of mine. Sean Evans was the senior VP at Aristocrat at that point in time, and that was 2007. And I joined Aristocrat, and that's how it all started for me on the supplier side.
That's awesome. Yeah, Sean's a good guy. He's basically my neighbor, so we all live in the same community. So what changed your mind? So originally you said, hey, I don't want to do this, and then you did it. So like what bridged that gap? Was it just looking at maybe, hey, there's some money in it, or what took you back over to your dad's side of the fence?
Yeah, I mean, look, you just, there was no malice or spite for not wanting to get into it. You just, at some point in time, and I don't mean to brag about my father here. My father is a legend in this industry, right? Yeah. And so when I to this day, right, he's in his late 70s now and has been retired for many years, but to this day, I'll go to meetings anywhere in the world and they'll say, "Are you Ken Orchard's son?" Like I get it, to this day. So there's a little bit of just saying, "I'll go and do my own thing," right? I won't get into gaming, and then my brother followed in his footsteps as well. But yeah, it just worked out. I was at the Hard Rock, like I mentioned, having a great time, living the lifestyle of a young guy living in Vegas, working at the Hard Rock, and Aristocrat offered a good job with significant pay rise, and I knew I'd be good at it, so I took the shot.
What advice did your dad give you and your brother, being a legend in the industry? What advice did he give you guys in this space?
He didn't. He was never home.
He said good luck.
All the time. Said, don't screw up my name.
Yeah, basically don't F it up.
Yeah, right.
No, any advice was always from our mum's side of the family.
Yeah.
No, look, he was always good. He was always good at just being able to bounce a few things off him and understand. But he, for the most part, he's really let us do our own thing and has been nothing but supportive.
That's wild. Awesome. So you mentioned the Hard Rock and some of those days. Did you have any fun celebrity stories? Were you out partying with Motley Crue or something when they came to town, or what was your best memory of that kind of thing, without incriminating yourself?
Yeah, oh God, it was an amazing experience. And like I said, I was working in marketing over casino and hotel, and then they actually split the two because the hotel piece got so big, right? Because the brand, everybody wanted to be associated with the brand. So we did. I had the best job ever. I mean, most people in those days in Vegas were cold calling, trying to drive business. I literally would answer the phones, take down the best 5 to 10 opportunities. We would never negotiate dollars. We'd only negotiate rooms because that's what people just wanted, rooms. They wanted to be able to film. And I'd take those opportunities to my boss and kind of we'd whittle them down to the 2 or 3 that we'd want to do. VH1, MTV, Playboy, Howard Stern. Yeah. Howard Stern's probably the best one. I mean, I negotiated. The Palms had just come online, and the Palms were really booming at the time with George Maloof and everybody else.
The whole thing.
Exactly, and they wanted Stern because they had a connection to Stern.
Yeah.
Peter Morton had a connection too. So it really became a bidding war those last year or two to try to keep Stern at the Hard Rock, and I was part of that deal. And look, people think it was the Palms was taking away from the Hard Rock at the time. They were both booming and helping each other, right? You had that Orange County crowd coming into Vegas, and life was good for everybody. We were all making a lot of money. But Howard Stern, had lunch with Howard Stern, and he's a really private guy behind the scenes. But that guy gets it, right? He's a businessman. He understands what the sponsorships and what the sponsors do. So lunch with Howard Stern around the Hard Rock pool was probably the highlight.
Sounds pretty good. Yeah,
that wouldn't
not a bad way to live your life.
Yeah, good man. He was a good man. Well, we had Don Marandino there at the time too, and Don thought he was more of a rock star than all of the rock stars, right? So
that's right. Why wouldn't you?
The other story, one last story. We had it was David Bonderman. He's a Texas oil billionaire, and he came in for his 60th birthday, and he basically rented out the entire casino and the joint. And the Rolling Stones were touring America at the time, and he had Robin Williams open for comedy inside the joint, private party of about 500 people. Then John Cougar Mellencamp. And then the Rolling Stones came off tour and did a private gig. And so we were standing in the joint with about 400 or 500 people watching the Rolling Stones. It was amazing.
That is fascinating. Honestly, if I had $1 billion, that I guess is the kind of thing you want to flex with, right? Like you can only buy such a fancy car. But when you go, hey, you know what? I'm pulling the Stones off tour, getting Robin Williams, one of the funniest guys ever live, to do a show. And I mean, not to mention Mellencamp. Like now all of a sudden that's where you flex your money.
We just need new friends, man. We don't need to be a billionaire. I just want the invite to this free show.
You want to be invites $4.99 and $500 to the 500-person party.
But you're right. That's what you got to judge yourself on. You talked about the size of the shower. It's like, who opened your birthday party? And Mellencamp was the opener, for Christ's sake.
Landon opened mine. It wasn't very appealing. It didn't get quite the rise that these guys would get. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Hey, I give you a discount.
That was good. Yeah, no worries. Man, you were talking earlier about, the rugby days, and I find it interesting, and this is not really related to gaming, but I was told you were a national BMX champion. So while you were also growing up, you were doing tricks and riding the bikes too. Do you ever do that anymore? Or do you still get around the neighborhood on the BMX or what?
I can barely walk these days, mate. Much less ride a BMX bike. You have been talking to Robert Perry. Grew up racing BMX. Loved it. Was the Australian national champion at one point in time, a long time ago. But I tell you what, I was watching the BMX in the Olympics, and it's come a long way. And we've got Connor Fields, right?
Yeah.
His dad's Mike Fields is in the industry. Hello, Mike Fields. If you happen to see this, I miss you. He's a good man. Look, they're riding on those cement tracks now to try to get more speed. Those crashes are crazy. My days, it was all dirt. And you fell off. It hurt, but it was a bit softer. So, that goes back a long way, man. But I haven't done anything like that in a while.
Well, I laugh because I used to, and I was never riding BMX, but I lived by Green Valley High School, and there used to be like dirt just everywhere, and they were formed into ramps, and you'd hear a lot of those guys that eventually became X Games guys would be out there just doing tricks. You'd see them. You would just watch them doing flips or tricks off the dirt ramps out in the desert, and you're like, that's fast. I was too nervous to try it. I didn't have that kind of, DNA in me, but it was pretty cool to see. So, and then now, to your point about the cement track, Connor, I mean, he was going for the title, and then he wrecked, and, unfortunately, he sounds like he's going to be okay, but had the big injury.
There's a few accidents, a couple of the Australian riders before they went over, and these are like life-changing accidents now.
Yeah.
They're crashing so hard, they're doing some permanent damage to themselves just to get that extra speed. But it's a bit too dangerous these days. But you're seeing that, to point about the X Games, you see that influence really coming into the Olympics, right? With skateboarding and BMX, and you're seeing some of these old traditional sports fade out just to keep that younger generation engaged. So, it's sad to lose those traditions, but it's also, you got to do it, I guess. That's what today's audience is demanding.
No doubt. Yeah, it was fun to watch Tony Hawk be there. I mean, he wasn't competing, but just engaging and coaching or whatever he was doing. I was like, dang, he's Olympian now. He's a video game guy, right? Forever. And it's funny. So it could have been. I mean, if we pulled that Olympic journey forward a few years, I mean, you could have been racing for the gold, the Aussie gold.
Oh, mate, I don't know. No, good times though. But I missed my good friend Robert Perry. In fact, he sent me a picture the other day. I can't believe his son Knox is starting at college as of 2 days ago. So time flies, mate. I remember all our kids were little and around the same age, and now they're all off to university.
Now they're all adults, and you're telling them not to ruin your name as they go do the next thing. Right?
Exactly.
Just keep it going.
Exactly.
They'll be getting
Scary.
Are you Dallas Orchards kid?
Well, so what are you excited about right now, Dallas? What are you guys working on that excites you? Like, what gets you up in the morning and you're like, I can't wait to see this thing take fruition?
Yeah, look, being back in Australia is pretty fun for me. Lockdown's a bit disappointing, but we were in lockdown in Vegas for 7 months before we got back. Mm-hmm. Getting over here was hard work. Had to go through quarantine a couple of times. Yeah. Wasn't a lot of support. So just getting back to Australia, getting my kids back in school and having a life was fantastic. Yeah. So being in Australia is first and foremost. But then from a work standpoint, really back to what we said earlier, and I don't mean to be repetitive. It's the challenge is for IGT. We have never fulfilled our potential in this market. Yeah. And let me frame that by saying it's difficult because Aristocrat are so big and so strong, right? So to take anything away, I mean, the customers down here don't want to be monopolized, but they will be monopolized if you can't offer value because Aristocrat do offer value, right? And so for me, it's about clearly establishing IGT as number 2 in this market. We've got the size, we've got the scale, we've got the experience, we've got the talent, and we've got to put it all together across systems, service, and game sales to make sure we're a strategic company, not a transactional company. And we're the only company that can compete with Aristocrat in this region. So I'm excited to be in Australia, and the mission to strengthen IGT, build great games in the Australian market, as we mentioned earlier, which we know will work everywhere else in the world, and to really become a clear number 2 and hopefully put a little bit of pressure on the big guy down the street. That's what motivates me every day, and I'm excited about it. I just need the bloody venues to open.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Create good games. So how many studios do you guys have in Australia?
Yeah, we've got 3. So we're in Beijing, Melbourne, and Sydney. So I manage all 3 of those studios. Under my previous role, I managed all the global studios. Now I've just got the focus over those 3, but it's great, right? Because it's making them focus exactly on our home market. And these studios previously have been building games for the rest of the world as well. And I've kind of push that to the side with the support of the executive team, and we're making sure that these guys are doing nothing but building great games for Australia. So all the changes have been made. I've been down here a year now. We've moved all the pieces around. I've got the right team in place. It's all about stability and execution now. And like I mentioned earlier, our customers want us to be successful. They want competition down here.
Sure.
They want diversity. And that's all you can ask for, right, is for a chance to succeed. And look, don't get me wrong, IGT's had some great years in Asia Pacific, but we're capable of so much more. And hopefully I can lead us to the promised land.
Yeah, when you talk about that and focusing on games for that region, what does that mean? Like, is there things you stop doing because you go, well, Australians maybe don't respond as well to, like you said, maybe it's all multi-line progressive jackpot chase stuff, or like what's the new focus? Like when they start dialing in, what are some of the features that the Aussie player is looking for that maybe doesn't resonate somewhere else?
Yeah, really good question. So this is something I've challenged with my whole career going back and forth. The entertainment value is not here, right? So the regulations and harm minimization are such that it's quite difficult to create the bells and whistles. The players aren't interested in the bells and whistles, nor can you really get them approved. So it's about a hardcore gaming experience, and the players really want jackpots, of course. So it's and they want return on their bet. They don't want dribble pay games. They don't want low volatility games. They don't want time on device. They're willing to really get in and get out and bang away. And you know, the games these days have coached them that you can continuously dig yourself out of a hole by continuing to play. And so they're just very mature gamblers, jackpot driven, jackpot chasers, and they want action. So it's all about showing them what the game's capable of doing within that first $40 or $50, and then having them experience the rest of the product. But bells and whistles don't really you know.
Yeah,
They're not, the local players aren't looking for that.
So the path for you guys is to figure out if you can create successful games in one of the most mature markets, competitive mature markets, and then once you guys figure that, we'll call it math model, or solution, and then you move that to the other regions, including the U.S. and Canada and Mexico.
Absolutely, and that's what people don't, you know, they forget about Lightning Link, right? Lightning Link, at that time, Ainsworth was making a big run here in Australia, and Aristocrat actually was struggling a little bit by Aristocrat terms, right? So Ainsworth had quad shots and a bunch of other great games. So Scott Olive came back to Aristocrat, and he built Lightning Link for Queensland, right? One jurisdiction inside of the Australian market. They didn't care about the rest of the world, and Queensland's probably the most mature link market. And when Lightning Link, you know, showed its capabilities and performed in Queensland, it was about then tweaking it for the other states in Australia and the rest of the world. So that's exactly what the blueprint is you got to make sure you get your links working in New South Wales and Queensland. And look, if they're working for upwards of 12, 18 months and they're still well above house average, that's when you know you're onto a winner, and that's when you start looking to take it to North America.
Yeah, that's wild. It's interesting to hear that, right? Because a lot of times people, you hear people when they start thinking globally go, well, I got to make a game that works for the people of New Jersey and the people of New South Wales. And sometimes maybe you get the product that's a little watered down, right? But when you say, hey, whatever the market, in this case, it was, you know, Queensland, Australia, you go, we're going to make one that really works right here. Because like you were describing the Aussie gambler, and I'm sitting there going, well, that's me. I don't want to sit there all day. I'm not going to sit there because I would rather be, here's my couple $100, rip my face off or pay me. But I'm going to get in and out, make that decision. So by focusing there, getting a good game, you've probably found a lot of allies, or obviously Lightning Link found a ton in the global markets going, yeah, us too, right? So it sounds like maybe that's going to, you know, it's not a bad philosophy to say, hey, if the Aussies are kind of the ones that are the best judges of new games, hey, if it works for them, probably going to resonate in most markets globally as well.
Yeah, well, you just hit the nail on the head, right? And it's easy to see how everybody goes down that road of trying to create games for the entire globe, because you're trying to save money on R&D, right? And the regulatory environment, I'm not going to cry poor from a manufacturer standpoint. The regulatory environment has made it really tough to get games approved in multiple jurisdictions, right? So that's what it really came down to, is companies are trying to save money on R&D, because you build one game, you've got to build it. Yeah, people don't realize you're seeing the same name, but the game's been built 19, 20 different times, right? So the amount of money you're spending. So it's natural to try to build games and try to get them approved in as many jurisdictions as you can, because you don't have an unlimited R&D pile of money.
Sure.
But in the markets that offer the greatest returns, you have to have the discipline to be able to step back and build games dedicated to that market, knowing the value will come when you get it right. But it is a hard discipline, and that's why I say a lot of companies haven't really fulfilled their potential in this market, because you've got to stay true, you've got to continue to invest, and you've got to continue to fail, but fail fast, and then find that best game.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the Asia Pacific player, maybe it's Aussie specifically. They don't need all the frills. You said they don't need the bells and whistles. Just give them good math, let them play. Yet, for you, it sounds like when I was asking some people saying, hey, give me some info on Dallas, they said, well, he is largely responsible. Obviously, you're probably going to deflect credit here, but for Aristocrats' kind of strategy in the least premium game style, like where you're going after big brands and you were maybe driving that agenda. So do you see that merging down there as well, or do you say, is that more of an American thing? Like, how do you see some of the big name licensed brands playing in your region compared to how, obviously they seem a lot more popular here in the U.S.?
No, that's why I mentioned when you asked the previous question or the point around being localized or being focused. I was on the other end when I first was coming up the ranks at Aristocrat, and I realized pretty fast, Aristocrat, we were only 15-20% of the market when I first joined. And we're capable of so much more, right? Sure. And so the problem was that Australian-style game at that point in time, it was resonating from a mathematical standpoint, but I was watching what IGT and WMS were doing at the time with the bells and whistles and the links and the signage, and I was just like, we're getting our asses kicked, right? So we had Cash Express out there, and we had a reluctant recurring revenue install base, if you like, and I just said, and then we did the studies, and we saw that what it was worth, almost $1 billion on an annual basis, and so I started the push at Aristocrat to say, we need more of that money, and to be honest, at the time I came up against a lot of people that didn't want to go down that road. It was always in Australia, starting with Len Ainsworth, considered almost unethical to share in your customer's cash box. And so I was like, look, it's not unethical. Everybody's doing it. It's a model that works in North America. So I spent a lot of time coming back and forth from Australia to the United States, trying to show the game designers at Aristocrat, which I considered at the time to be the best in the world, but they weren't building games for the highest earning market in the world. So I got a lot of them to come to America. I got a lot of them to see what was going on and challenge them. And because their hands had been tied from a regulatory standpoint. So when they saw what they could build for the US and get it approved, you started seeing big games, right? Then we went after some licenses, and we had Ted Hussey join with the Verve cabinet and Nicholas Bennett in Studio 6 and Scotty Olive. They started building games focusing on good math, but of course the bells and whistles. So I've come back the other way, to your point, and I've had to kind of strip all that excitement out. The brands don't work down here. They simply don't. The same brands don't resonate, of course, with the Australian players that resonate in America. And it's really about the proprietary content down here and derivatives of proprietary content that take the player on a ride.
Are you guys looking at developing things outside of these link, hold, and spin style games? Because don't take this as like a diss, but even AGS is doing it. I feel like we're all trying to figure out the model of Lightning Link, right? And Dragon Link and these link style, hold and spin style games. But what's next? What's the next big game? Because I feel like if you're chasing the Aristocrat, we're always just playing catch up until someone gets that next, math model that is different and unique outside of a spin or link style game, if that makes sense. Yeah. What are we creating that's not that?
No, it's a great question. Well, we've all been creating what's not that, but it doesn't sell. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's the problem. The players are telling us what they want to buy. So we were actually at IGT, and I was the chief product officer at the time, and probably take some accountability for this. We were the last ones to respond to hold and respin. We continued to try to innovate. And you've seen all our waterfall games in the US, which are knocking it out of the park now, and we were trying to do it, and they are selling. But in the recurring revenue world, people just want those jackpots. So we were really focused on innovation. But so now it's a hard balance to get right. You've got to continue to innovate. You've got to design something different for the player to experience to see if you can move the needle and move the market forward. But you've also got to spend the great majority of your R&D on what's selling. And as I mentioned before, it's really, and Scientific Games have done a good job of this as well. I respect all our competitors. With JJB and Dufu Dukai, everything they've sold in the last 5 or 6 years, 7 years even, are just derivatives of that take the player on a journey. Sure. There's nothing innovative about it, but it's continuing to work well. And so we want to continue to innovate. We want to move the market forward, but we also have to respond to not what our operators and customers want, to what the players are demanding.
You guys had a good run with, and you're still having a good run, but the persistence style game, I feel like you guys really took that on, and that was a different...
Like the Scarabs, you mean?
Yeah, of course. And
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, first it went Pick'em Progressive and the 4-level Progressive, which was like Daji Dali and Dukai and those style games. And then Lightning Link came out, and then it was kind of this little rush towards progressives. I don't think it had the persistence, but it didn't have the impact that the Link hold and spin style games and the multi-denom games did.
Yeah, and I think that's mostly the difference between the models, right? Most of the persistent stuff is in that for sale space, and then you've got most of the links in the IRR space. But that persistent story is a really good one, and we're continuing to do really well. And I'm trying to get some of those games down here. It's hard. I've got to rework a lot of the math because of the regulations, and then all of a sudden we've watered down the game, but it doesn't have the same objective. But we have a studio in Graz that I used to manage, and they're still there, obviously part of the IGT team. Probably as strong as any studio in the world. And, as part of CLEO and Atronic coming through before the acquisitions. And they've been building these adaptive and waterfall games for 15, 16 years, right? So they've mastered the art. And so you see IGT leading that space, but it's just through experience and it's through learnings and failures. And you see some of the other manufacturers trying to jump onto that trend right now, and they're not having a ton of success. And that's because it doesn't happen overnight, right? And so we're really lucky to have that studio in Graz, and those waterfall games are fantastic games.
Can you revamp Twin Win?
Landon's been wanting a Twin Win
Valhalla
reboot.
One of my favorite games. It's good math. It's different. It's interesting. It's fun. It's
good that you ask, because I'm asked that constantly. One of my big initiatives when I first got to IGT was bringing back great intellectual property, because we were continuing to innovate too much. We were continuing to use third parties too much, and we'd lost really control of our own destiny. So one of our 4 pillars now is to bring back the brands, because nobody has the intellectual property that IGT has, right? To be able to bring them back in a more contemporary fashion. So put it on the list and we'll deliver it.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
I'll be your first player. Not that that's going to help the bottom line at all, but
he's in line. It feels like it helps the bottom line. I feel like that's the definition to get your face ripped off or win a ton of money. Like you're in between that and Valhalla, you know what you're doing. You're not going to be there long, but you're going to have a good ride or a bad ride.
Well, you go to any high limit, they're going to have a CLEO or a Valhalla or a Twin Win. I mean, those games are still very.
There's a reason.
Yeah, they're good games.
Well, that's back to your request. One of the reasons I went down that road, and I'm passionate about, is when I first got to IGT. You guys know Mike Brennan, I'm sure. Mike Brennan and I did a tremendous amount of work with the marketing folks and the product management folks to really analyze what IGT's greatest brands were, so that we started putting them into the portfolio. And Cleopatra, hands down, wins in every category, every criteria, as the greatest brand IGT ever had. Remember, I'd just come from a company where extending games was a science, right? There was a committee. You didn't build a new Buffalo without a whole bunch of thought. Right. And at IGT, when I first got there, we had 9 Cleopatras being built in various parts of the business with no cohesive strategy, not staying true to any of the DNA of the original game. And so that's all gone, right? And where the focus has come in IGT in the last 3 to 4 years, and I think what's generating a lot of our success is really making sure we understand what games we want to bring forward, what you can't change, the player won't allow for you to change, what you can modernize, and then iterating on those great games. And that's a huge part of the IGT portfolio now, is bringing back the classics in a more contemporary fashion, and the players are eating it up.
What is the risk there? So CLEO has its own brand itself, right? What if you took a CLEO and added a hold and spin feature to it and it flops? Does that kill the old brand, or like what's the risk there? I feel like people don't want to take those risks because they're like, don't mess with the golden goose.
Yeah, Kiski mentioned Scarab before. We have these debates all the time. So Scarab on its own was a very successful for sale game, and we wanted to link it. And then the first design of the link had a hold and respin element. And we're like, well, this is kind of, is this Scarab, right? What's the player expecting when they walk up to Scarab? Now you're changing that. So it is risky. You potentially damage the brand, but you've got to, it all comes down to just trying to get consensus on, let's say, the 25% of the DNA from the original that can't disappear from any extension, right? And we all think we know what that is. But it is risky, to your point, because when you start trying to build these hybrids and use the brand to get them there, you can absolutely change the experience and kill the original as well.
Aren't most of the Cleopatras in the field owned today?
Yeah, No, I was talking Scarab when we linked it.
Okay, right. Yeah. I got you.
We're looking to take Scarab into the link space as a recurring revenue game, and it was like, you got to add something to it rather than just that sticky feature.
Yeah, could you imagine the hold and spin with the 10 like persistent deal? That'd be an interesting.
Yeah,
I'd play it. I don't know. You know, you get me to sit down. I guess we'll see how it could potentially execute. But
gets a little Frankenstein. What are you guys playing these days? So when you walk, what's your favorite games? What's out there? What do you guys enjoy?
Good question.
Twin Win for sure.
Yeah.
Twin Win, CLEO.
In the high limit, we always bang those. If we can find a Valhalla, I'm a sucker for that game. I think part of it is I feel like I have Viking DNA, so I just relate to the giant, guys on there. But I usually have a good ride there. Newer stuff, not to be a home team guy, but I like some of the AGS, like the new Captain's Riches theme. That's a little persistent, right? Not as long. It's, a couple spin persistence.
Yep.
ATI's games are always good. I mean, you still find me on a Dragon Link. You'll still find me on, some of those games. Every Stepper, I feel like I play some of their stuff. Your poker, obviously, Landon. Every casino he goes to, he probably wagers $500 on.
Don't people that need to know that.
Yeah. You played some of the new stuff, Landon. You seen some of the new boxes. I mean, because I think IGT was guilty of underinvesting in poker for so long because we had such a giant market share. You started to see a little bit of competition. So in the last few years, we really picked up the investment. You see the new cabinets and the new formats. And again, we were always scared. We were scared to evolve poker because you think the player's not going to come along for the ride. But every time you give them a bigger box or a bigger screen, they eat it up, right? We can't be scared to innovate. To your point, the game can stay the same. But have you played any of the new poker games on the new cabinets?
I've been waiting. You guys, I forget which one it was. The Aces game that I saw, I think at G2E, and it was on a portrait cabinet. It wasn't on a. I haven't seen that in the field yet, but I've been looking for it. Right. You know where that is?
No, we got it. We released it on the 27-inch, and we've got the curve coming out as well. But you have to continue to evolve, right? Keep competition at bay. Like you said, Kiski, it's funny. What we've seen in lockdown is people even more so when things reopen go back to their original favorite games, right?
Yeah.
Like so, we're seeing performance really pick up in the old trusted games because people are. There's that pent up demand, and they want to play.
Makes sense, and that's what you miss. Like you miss that. Like everybody, I feel like when they go to the casino, has a couple anchor games, right? Like you're gonna Landon's always gonna find a bar top usually and play some video poker. I'm usually gonna play, some combination of Dragon Link, Lightning Link, something like that, and then Buffalo. I like those games, and then branch from there. So when you're missing it, you're missing that anchor. Is what I feel like, right? So if it's an IGT or an AJ or whoever the game is, right? Like that's your first one. Because we saw that too. Like it was weird when things reopened here. Like our Rake and Bacon, the original, was off the charts. We're like, what? Like it's doing better than before. And it was just people missed it. And I'm sure everybody saw similar, whatever their core, their number one game was. People were going, oh, this is my IGT favorite. And now, Treasure Box or whatever is off the charts. And
well, what's happening? Are there any closures? I mean, I hear Delta's kind of spreading again over there. What's
Not
the
too many.
Scene?
There's like we got there's a couple casinos here and there that'll close temporarily, but I don't think we've seen in the U.S. or at least not in the part of the world I look after with like big closures, right? So everybody seems to be open. Mask mandates are coming back, so a lot of pretty much a lot of folks are saying, hey, if you want to come inside, just put a mask on. We're not going to check your vaccine or anything like that. Just put the mask on, but. We'll see. I mean, Delta's definitely running through the country right now, but I haven't seen any casino closures really beyond maybe a week here or there. But
question while we sit here and have we've created our own development studio here, so I want to continue down this path real quick because you guys took Keno and the CLEO and then you added a slot feature to Keno CLEO. Mm-hmm. Can you do that to video poker? So you have like a triple double, you get 4 aces, you go into a hold and spin bonus round. That would be wild. Maybe I'm the only player in the world that wants that, but
chances are good. There's some more like you.
That's the problem. You see, it's we can do anything, man. Software and coding. It's that bankroll we need from you, Landon. If I give you Twin Win and I give you that, we're probably stretching you a bit thin, bro. I don't know if you can keep both games.
I'll go Twin Win for now. I like video poker.
All right.
If I have to pick,
stack rank. All right, Twin Wins on the
double
list, and then I'll look. And then I'll put the feedback.
If you ever see him winning in high limit, he actually starts doing like the flipper dolphin noise, like I'm not going to do it here. Yeah, he's in there clicking like he's a Snowflake the dolphin from Ace Ventura. But
how can you not?
I listen. I get it. I just don't have that.
I can't believe you just went Snowflake over Flipper. I mean, Flipper's the most probably broadly known dolphin of all time.
True. Yeah.
I just watched Ace Ventura again the other day. How good. I tried to get my kids to watch it because I'm trying to get them to watch Dumb and Dumber and Ace Ventura and all the classic comedies, and they just look at me like I'm an idiot.
Yeah, that's going to be a sad day. So it's funny. I showed my kids are 4 and 3, right? So. This is now the second year in a row where I've showed them Sandlot around 4th of July because it's not really a 4th of July movie, but there's a scene with the fireworks, and they're mesmerized by it, right? So they're just like, this is great, right? The dog, the whole thing. But there's going to come a day where I go, hey, you're a little older. Let's watch Dumb and Dumber. They're going to look like your kids probably going, Dad, I ain't watching this. I don't want any part of this movie. It ain't as funny as you think it is. That time has changed, right? Like
straight back to YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Go back and watch your 5-minute clips.
Well, we appreciate you joining us, and we're kind of getting closer to the end here. We want to try to keep these to like 50 minutes so people can listen in and out of their way to work.
Yeah.
Gambling. You have a gambling story that you
I'm
can
assuming
share
you're a
with
gambler.
us. I know you've heard some of our podcasts, so you know that we're going to get to this point.
Yeah, I've actually probably my best story, I would say, is the funniest story at least, was I was with Robert Perry and Matt Wilson, and
Yes,
we were in Oklahoma actually, and we'd won and I'm going to get this wrong. But we'd we'd won a bunch of money, and then we were with the Gaming Capital guys, and we went into the restaurant to eat. And for some reason, the cage had closed. Something had closed. We couldn't cash the money back in, so they would use it as currency at the restaurant, and we had to spend it. We were all on the road the next day, so we're up a couple of $1,000. And we ended up just spending it all on risotto and red wine. Right? So we got about 13 risottos because we're trying to give the money back to the casino, to our customers at the time. We got about 13 risottos and a couple of bottles of Silver Oak just to try and run through the money. And we'll never forget. We'll never forget that. So we trade text messages on that. So many I can't even remember, guys.
That's hilarious. You're just sitting there in the restaurant going, hey, we need more Camus and whatever you have, the most expensive food.
And risottos, about 13 risottos sitting in front of us on the table. So good way to spend the money.
Do some damage on those risottos, that's for sure.
Exactly.
That's a good way to go. But before we kick you out too hard, one more question for you. So we also do every episode what we call the Max Bet Challenge. So you were kind of unofficially challenged. Like, so Matt and Robert, I think, both talked about you. They were texting us saying, hey, you got to get Dallas on, a UNLV guy, Vegas guy, Aussie, obviously. Check all the boxes for those two.
Yep.
But who would you want to see us interview in a future episode? Like, you know a big landscape of people in the biz. Like, who do you think we should ping? And we always say bonus points if you can introduce us, but if not, we'll try to chase him down anyway.
Well, I think my brother. I think he'd be good. Yeah, at some point in time. Look, he's very different than me, right? They used to call me the chief revenue officer, and he was the revenue prevention officer. Right? He's always been on the compliance and the risk
the
side.
RPO, we don't like those guys.
And I'm out there trying to drum up the business. But he's got a pretty amazing story in the industry, through Australia, through New Zealand, through the United States, getting IGT licensed in the state of Nevada. He's the president of IAGA, and different angle than me, but great experiences in the industry as well. So at any point in time, I think.
And what's his name?
Luke Orchard.
Luke. Okay, I didn't know if you guys had a whole city vibe going. I meant to ask you earlier, is Dallas, like, where'd that come from? Is it just Cowboys fan growing up? Or?
No, we didn't even know what American football was. It was my old man was in the Navy with a guy called Dallas, and they liked the name and then got it. I think it was just a sign of things to come, right? Living in the US.
Exactly. Being all over the place. That
sounds awesome. Like if his brother calls out his dad, we're gonna get the whole family.
Orchard crew. Get Ken on the whole program.
Why not? But Raider fan now. Got to be a Raider fan, right?
Oh boy.
Got Knights and Raiders. I fell in love with hockey those couple of seasons before I came back to Australia. I had rugby buddies my whole career in the States telling me how much I would love hockey, and boy, they were right. That's great stuff.
Same, yeah. I was not watching hockey until the Knights came, and now it's probably my number one sport. Like, I'm watching the trade deadline, watching the offseason. I mean, it's stupid what I'm into. I'm like half Canadian at this point with as much hockey as I watch. But yeah, that's awesome.
Sad day when we traded Fleury, right? Everything from that first season
got no return. It was really that was not ideal.
I know. So Len, that was just for you because I wanted to start with sports and end with sports. With
gaming,
with the no sports guy.
I'm just thinking to myself, Mike's
Lennon's like, who's
third
Flory?
job is going to be a sports betting podcast.
You never know.
Cut.
Yeah, cut. Well, thanks for coming on, brother. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you,
guys. Really appreciate it. You stay safe and healthy, and catch up for a beer when I'm back in Vegas.
Perfect.
Definitely.